Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Arai News Live. I'm Brian, your host. Those of you who've been here before will remember I'm your host. If you're hoping someone else to show up, not today, but maybe we'll get somebody else to chime in, but so far I'm the only guinea pig willing to stand in front of the camera. So, welcome back. It's been several months since we've done a live stream. Believe it or not, as simple as this looks, it takes a lot of effort and time. And the last 18 months has been upside down. Demand is huge in motorcycling across the world. Production is limited. Arai is handmade, as we all know. It's really hard to spool up production for instantaneous demand increases. So it's difficult to keep a high standard while increasing production. So Mr. Arai chooses to keep production at a stable level, make sure we have the quality that we need, deliver as best we can across the world based on demand. And basically we're holding our own. Shipping delays have caused problems, so we appreciate everyone's patience. Getting to market has never been easy, but it's even more difficult now. Again, Arai is produced to order. So when an importer orders, Arai orders the materials, Arai produces it, they ship it, it comes to market. Warm out of the oven, if you will. It's still warm. So it's important to realize that we're not just stocking helmets in a warehouse somewhere and delivering from that inventory. So we appreciate your patience as we struggle with raw materials, labor shortages, container ship shortages, port entry delays, and trucking delays. So all of those things are out of our control. So we really appreciate you guys' patience. If you find an Arai that you like, buy it. Don't wait. Don't hope you're going to get a better deal somewhere else because they are in short supply and high demand. As always, subscribe if you like this content. You guys want to kick in any ideas for future shows, we appreciate that. Like it, we appreciate that as well because it gets it out there for more people. And we're going to try and do more live streams and, of course, short videos to help people understand Arai better and the functionality of Arai. So it's always welcome when you guys give us comments, feedback, good or bad. We're okay. We're big boys. We can handle the negative feedback as well, although we do appreciate the positive feedback. So it's been a few months since we've done a live stream, and we decided to come back, and we have a special guest with us almost all the way on the other side of the world. Visiting today, it's Randy Mamola, MotoGP extraordinaire and commentary specialist. I think everyone who knows motorcycling knows Randy, knows his early racing career and obviously his commentary in the last few years, and of course the two-up ride at MotoGP events. So I think Randy's here. We can hook up with Randy and say, hey. All right, Randy, you there?
Yeah, I'm sitting right here, buddy.
All right, man, welcome. I'm doing real well. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm sitting, as you said, halfway around the world, I guess. Well, you're a little bit closer than where my hometown is in Santa Clara, California, than me on the East Coast. But yeah, I'm here in Barcelona, and it's been raining today. I know that everybody's very interested in the testing that's going on in Moto2 and Moto3, which is a private test down in Jerez. Because obviously we have a couple of Americans down there, a few Americans down there riding, so they're very, very interested in what's happening.
Well, awesome. We do appreciate the time. Spain, it's rain. It's better than East Coast Pennsylvania, which is freezing and just about to snow on us, which is okay. We like to change the season. I like to change the seasons anyway. So we appreciate, again, the time. So let's get into it. I talk a lot, so I'm going to try not to talk as much today. I'm going to give you as much time to talk and let us know.
You and I are going to get along very well.
Yeah.
The answers are very short.
We're going to fight. We're going to fight for airtime, right? But I'm going to let you give us a little history. I mean, you've been with the Arai for a long time. I mean, when I first came with the Arai, you were wearing Arai's, and you were pretty famous in MotoGP for massive saves and kind of power slides and antics on the racetrack. You were always entertaining, so it was really cool that you were an Arai guy. Give us a little history about your racing career, and then when you came on with the Arai and your experience with the Arai throughout the decades.
My racing career in just Grand Prix or my whole life?
Let's stick with Grand Prix, and if we have more time, we can go back to earlier days.
Well, it was only 7 years. From the first time I rode a motorcycle, I was on the grid in the World Championship in 1979 when I was 19 years old. So, yeah, I started in the World Championship in 1979, and I was racing for Bimota at the time. And for those of you who know and or remember Bimota, they built racing chassis, but they were, their forte was also building, you take a Ducati engine and they build something really special about it. It was unique, one-offs, things like that. And anyway, I raced for them in 1979, but I only stayed with them for 4 races before I jumped off of that team, and I actually went to Serge Zago, another, it was a private team out of Belgium. And in fact, when Mike Baldwin back in 1979 was racing in America for Kawasaki, Mike was racing in Europe in 1979 on a RG500 Suzuki, a production bike, production race bike, obviously, Grand Prix bike. And eventually, as I said, I stopped racing with Bimota, moved over to Serge Zago, and the rest is history with that. Mike ended up getting hurt in Loudon, New Hampshire, I believe. I think he broke his femur, and I was given an opportunity to ride the 500 at Assen, which was my very first ride in a 500. And then basically from that viewpoint, I went to Suzuki factory in 1980, 81, 82, 83, and then Honda factory 84, 85, Yamaha factory 86, 87. Then Cagiva, 88, 89, 90. 91, took a sabbatical, and I can explain a little bit of that when we get into talking. 92, I went back to racing with Yamaha, with Budweiser, and it was kind of the team that ran out the back of the truck of Team Roberts. Kenny wanted to put something together, and it was quite unique because it was with Budweiser Yamaha, so it's kind of all the different sets of leathers that I have. To have Budweiser on a set of leathers was kind of cool. And my career stopped at the end of 92 because Kenny had the great idea of with Wayne and his team to run Dunlops for the first year and try to go for the championship. And we all know the accident that Wayne had and what went on in 93. But that was my particular title, was test rider, and I did that for 3 or 4 years for Yamaha and with Kenny.
Very cool. I knew a lot of that, but not all of it. So that's really good breakdown, because I followed it, but I was busy. I was a young guy here trying to keep up with just the U.S. stuff. So it's really cool. I didn't realize how young you were.
Yeah. So, I'm the youngest rider ever to be on the podium. Mark Marquez is the youngest rider to win the Grand Prix. I was the youngest podium at 19 years old and something. My birthday's in November 10th, so I just had my 62nd birthday. And obviously the Grand Prix are during the summer, so it was just before my 20th birthday. I stood on the podium with Boet van Domen and on the 500 class. Boet van Domen, myself, I was second, and Barry Sheen, and that was only my 5th race in the 500cc class. And so if I give you kind of a quick and short detail of each year, it's 1979. I finished 4th in the 250 championship and 8th in the 500, and I only did 8 of the races. I think there were 12 that year in the 500. I only got to do 8. I missed a couple of them. Again, I didn't start until Assen, but I got the Barry Sheen ride because Barry didn't sign up with Suzuki again. So I was with Heron Suzuki for 80 and 81. I finished second to Kenny Roberts my first year in the full season. I went right down to the last race, and then Lucanelli beat me. I was second in 81. Lucanelli was running the Olio Fiat by Galina Suzuki team out of Italy, another factory team. Then we had HB Suzuki with 82 and 83. I finished 6th and then 3rd. And in 83, that was the year of really the Americans, not just the fact that Kenny had won 3 titles before, but it was Freddie who won, Kenny was 2nd, I was 3rd, and Eddie Lawson was 4th. There was 4 Americans in the top 4 in the 500cc class. And, it was very, very unique times, when you look back at that. I went to Honda then because Suzuki stopped racing. There's a lot of history that I have to speak to you, and you have to stop me if it's going to take too much time. But when the Square 4 Suzuki was working so well, Kenny and Yamaha took their inline finally out, and I think in '81 had their first V. And that thing would run really, really quick and really fast on the straights, but they had some issues with it, teething issues going through the season. Anyway, the Honda came out with a 3-cylinder in '82 and '83. Freddie won the title with '83. Suzuki said, we can't keep up with this with a square 4. And eventually they came back, I think, with Schwantz in, I want to say 80, end of the 80s. I'm not sure when they came back, but obviously they had a V back then. And so I went to Honda. I missed the first 2 races with Honda. Oguma was the chief engineer who I knew. I missed the first 2 Grand Prix because I didn't have a ride. The big races for us in America were the 200 champion spark plug at Laguna Seca that we used to always do. Kenny Roberts, myself, and the Americans would come back because back then with the 500s you can bring them back, which was super unique. We did the match races. I did the match races and asked Honda if I can use a 3-cylinder. They gave it to me. Freddie Spencer got hurt in the match races. I had to go take over and start riding on the 3rd race of the season. I finished 2nd in the World Championship to Eddie, missing the first 2 races. Then I raced again with Honda in '85. I think I finished 5th or 6th or something like that in the championship. I wasn't very happy with them. They gave me Freddie's bike only one time, which was the 4-cylinder. I used it at Silverstone and I beat Eddie. Freddie was the only one that got the 4-cylinder then. And then Kenny Roberts dreamed up the fact that he wanted to start a team. It was Lucky Strike Yamaha. I signed up with it. It was great. I finished 3rd and then 2nd in the championship in '86 and '87. Wayne Gardner beat me to the championship. It's probably one of my prized possessions is the '87 World Championship because Eddie and I were both on Yamaha. He was on the Agostini team. Marlboro Yamaha was on Lucky Strike Yamaha. And obviously we were competing against each other to be the best Yamaha team. We ended up the best Yamaha team at the end of the year, but we both got beat by Wayne. So when I look back at my history, I've never been a world champion, but I was four times 2nd on 3 different brands of motorcycles. If you count Bimota, I think I've been on with 5 different brands of motorcycles on podiums in the world championship. So the diversity was there no matter what. And for me, it was just a fantastic season. And I would have to say a lot of the smoking the tire and all that kind of stuff, although I put up something on my Instagram just yesterday about Top Rack and stuff because somebody put something up about stoppies. The first stoppie that I showed going onto the grid was like 1984, which is I think 15, 16, or 20 years before they're even born. So, and I put something on my story on Instagram, and Top Rack answered it right away. Thought it was really cool because on the one that they had posted was 1986 in Paul Ricard on the Lucky Strike Yamaha, and it looked just like a Top Rack or Jack Miller, if you will. And I kind of answered to both of them just saying, this was 10 years before one of you and 11 years before the other one that both been born. We were doing this before that. So it was kind of cool.
That is really cool. I knew you got close to the championship. I didn't realize how close, and that there were just a couple of things in there that, not missing a couple of races or having the A bike would have actually made a tremendous difference. So
let me tell you, Jeremy, do you know the name Jeremy Burgess?
Yeah.
Jeremy Burgess was my mechanic back in 1980. And Mike Sinclair, who worked with Pat Hennon, another American rider, in the late 70s. Mike was really responsible for building a lot of stuff. When I raced for Yamaha USA, they gave me back in 1974, 75, when I was 14 years old in AFM. And 15, they gave me a TA 125, which was a twin 125 road racer specific, and a 250. I went to New Zealand where there was a lot of European riders, and you had to be 18 to race in the World Championship. But I went over there, beat a lot of them, won the 125 championship, and this has got the notoriety in Europe. Back then, as you remember, 78, 79, 80 is when Kenny won his titles. I was being groomed by Yamaha International, Yamaha USA, to be the next Kenny. dirt trackers and everything, and this is all of our history. You know, Wayne Rainey and Eddie Lawson, all of us did dirt tracking long before we road raced, and then we really got into road racing when Pat Hennon, Stevie Baker, and obviously Kenny went over and started to kind of rule the world in world championships. So it was very, 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 very unique. So yeah, there were times at Suzuki, like Jeremy Burgess said, and it made me feel really good because you don't always hear what the mechanics say about you or what's going on in the eras and stuff like that. But when he, you know, did the things with McDoohan, won titles, things like this with Valentino, obviously Wayne Gardner, you know, one of the things was the experience that those guys got. And I don't want to claim the experience because it was with me, but it was with the experience because when I finished second to Kenny in 1980, Suzuki made me the #1 rider. I mean, I didn't have #1 on my back. I didn't say I was #1 rider or anything, but anything that was new coming out of the factory would go on our bikes. And Lucanelli's team, Galena has been around the world a few times as well in the World Championship, and it was Graziano Rossi, Valentino's father, and Luca. I just lost his name now. Anyway, Galena put the team together, and for example, I lost the championship to Lucanelli. We were in Monza. I qualified pole position, and my bike seized on the warm-up lap. Suzuki had given us new pistons and things like that, said they were better, and they were better in practice. Everything worked, but something happened that, you know, just didn't work out, and Galena used what he thought would be, you know, better for the championship and stuff like that. So there were a few things that we just missed here and there. When it came down to, and everybody who's watching this that's a real racer and loves racetracks around the world, you know, Kenny Roberts and I went down to the last race in the Nürburgring, the Nordschleife, which is the 14-kilometer circuit, 260 corners, 6 laps racing. And my bike sucked a seal, and I lost the championship. I had to win. I was leading the race, and Kenny was in 5th, and he had to finish 4th. And I finished 5th, and he finished 4th, with my bike partly broken. So those were kind of the things down to the wire. But again, when I really think about the championship, really pushed hard with everything, especially when it was against Eddie, who was already 3 times world champion. He's a good friend. I've known him for a long time. And it went right down to the wire with Wayne, myself, and Eddie. And it just didn't happen. But I'm okay. I felt always on top of the world, standing on the podium with some of the greatest champions, Eddie Lawson, Wayne Gardner, Kenny Roberts, Barry Sheen. You know, these guys, these big names are still very, very big to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you talk about 83. I mean, talk about an American, you know, juggernaut, basically top 4. You were in that era, and it brings me to a question of, we may never see that again, but you think we'll see another American MotoGP champion or star, somebody that can fight for the box on a regular basis?
Well, I think there's a chance. I mean, when Dakota, the last time I was really in America, I mean, I'm in the States all the time, but the last time I was really involved or seeing the championship, Moto America and things like that with Wayne and Chuck Aston and the team that's putting that together and really trying to make that work to bring riders over. I had said to them back in 2015, the only way you're going to get this done is to start an American team. That it's the only way. And the American team can have Italian mechanics, Spanish mechanics, the people that need to live over here in Europe to make it more simplified, the traveling, the trucks to be parked and things like that. You know, Kenny did it because the budgets even back then were quite big when Kenny, you know, built his team, but was building eventually bikes in England, but had the team based down here where I live in Spain in Sitges, and you know, the amount of tracks that are here and things like that. But so yes, John Hopkins, and they have an American racing team at the moment. It's still in its learning curve in a big way, but everybody's in a learning curve when it comes to Moto2 because it's so tightly close in racing. but it is a home to come into there. I don't know if you saw it, Brian, but it was just announced today that the North American Talent Cup with MotoGP and Moto America is going to start. I sent that mail to Jeff Vale just before we came on live here because I just received it. That's another starting point. You're going to run Aprilia 250s. Everyone's going to have the same equipment. It becomes a lot cost effective, and this is where the difficulties all become. To get into Europe, whether you're from Australia, South America, anywhere outside of Europe, is very, very difficult because you're moving house, to get there. And you've got to really feel at home in order to make that happen. You and I both know at our age, when you look back at the chapters of your life, that the real friends that you have that you can say anything to are not necessarily the friends that you have when you're at work or you're going out to dinner with or something like that. Because when you go with the high school friends, it's going, you remember this thing's happened and so on. And you just have this different feeling. And, this is what the Europeans have. On Sunday nights, they fly home. They get to eat their food. They get to stay in their mom's beds or whatever their attire thing is. And that's the big difference. And taking somebody out of America or Australia and so on was a big challenge. This last week or 2 weeks ago, I was at the Valencia Grand Prix and I had a chance to hang out with Casey Stoner. He's another one that everybody knew, to move from Australia, McDowan, all these guys to make those challenges. Remy Gardner, who won the Moto2 championship this year, they moved over here when he was 12 years old and he's 22 or 23 now. So you've got to find that thing. Let's see. Joe Roberts, obviously we have Cameron Bouvier. We know we have Sean Kelly coming over here. I know that he tested yesterday. I know today. I don't know any of the results. But there's a start and there's a need, and Dorna knows it. The World Championship owners, they know that we need this, and this is why we went to Texas. This is why we pushed to get to Texas in the championship, because we know the necessity. As you probably saw with the F1, how strong it was in Austin and in Coda. It was insane. That Netflix movies are coming out and things like that with Formula One. This will be happening, I believe, with us as well. And that'll start, the American process. We've got to get money and teams behind them, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, I read something, or actually it might have been Kenny himself talking about going over to Europe, and I think he was the first to bring a motorhome, to basically live there, travel, be part of the community, and live there, become a European, if you will. And it was kind of a trendsetter. But you're right, support of family, friends, feeling like you're at home base, living instead of just, visiting, if you will. But having, the breeding grounds in America for these guys to get up to a European level or championship level. The Talent Cup's a huge entry for the younger guys to get into then MotoGP or Moto America, and then hopefully in an American racing team have a place to step to, and then have the support of the American racing community, because racing in Europe seems to be a lot more intrinsic with the culture and the fans. Here, it's nice and it's pretty good, but it's not at the level of MotoGP. So it'd be nice to get back there. Back in the day when Superbike in America was just huge. I mean, I remember it being huge, or maybe it was just my perception. I don't know. It was bigger to me, I think, than it is today. But it's really great that we have that Talent Cup coming, and then we have the American racing team and the step up, and of course, Dorna interested in helping open up this market and get us some guys to root for. But it's nice. Roberts has been doing really good. Cam's been doing really well, and I'm hoping Sean Dillon's going to do really well next year.
Cameron surprised us a lot in some of the races that he had done. It's, as I said, it's headhunting out there. I mean, it's tough. It's even tough for the European riders and the right people behind the team and setups and things like that. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of years. As I said, Dorna realizes that they need some people to come, from different parts of the world. As you know, they have Talent Cup in Asia now. Now we're going to have one in America to boost that. In the UK, there's a a lot to do with the fact, I think Cameron was, 6 times national champion, world superbike champion, superbike champion in the North America.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many it actually was, championships
5
total.
times. I know it was quite a lot, but it was hard to get him out of there because, he had a home. I mean, he was making good. He makes good money. He has X amount of races. He has a good clientele that follow him. The American guys have something that was really special. And, coming over here, and I didn't even know it. He was renting a house, maybe half a mile from my house, and my son Dakota recognized it. Nobody actually talked about it because the problem was with this COVID and us being blocked out. We haven't gone to any races. We've been, cut out ourselves. I went to 1 race in 2020, and I went to 3 races, this year.
Yeah, it's when you said, trying to get these guys out from, on top of the order, a big fish, little pond. I mean, you've got yourself a good gig going. If you're multi-champion on the, factory bike, great sponsors. I remember back in the day, Matt Mladen, people asked him, hey, why don't you go to the World Supers or something? He goes, no. I got it good here. I'm on a great bike, a great team. I'm winning, making good money. I like living here. Why would I want to mess that up? He had no ambitions to do any more. He was very happy being the king of this pond. So we got Cam going out there. We got Sean going out there. Hopefully, taking a big risk. They could have stayed here and been comfortable. But you're right. It's a challenge to get that to happen. And then unfortunately, the COVID situation over the last 18 months has just thrown any kind of event upside down. You can't get, the public in. You've got video, which is great. I love the instant replays. I love the couch. I love the fridge behind me. But something to be said about having, 20, 30, 40,000 fans going to an event cheering you on. Like Schwantz always said, I could hear them cheering. You're still on a 500 two-stroke, and you can hear the fans cheering as you go by. It's pretty impressive. So it's
You've got so many European young talented riders that are coming through because Spain was lit on fire when Kenny came here and opened up the dirt track, and people really started experiencing dirt track. Look at how big it is now. If you look up Rocco's Ranch on Instagram or anywhere, it's the Carduces. Ferran Cardus is racing in America at some races now because of Brad Baker. And he's helping them. In fact, I think me and Danny Pedrosa are going to do a Christmas ride. We have to share a bike, a Honda. It's supposed to be a Honda 100, but I think we're making it a 150 or so. But anyway, the Rocco's Ranch has this dirt track. And so if you can fit into that culture, which should be easy, because like skateboarders, like snowboarders, like everybody, when they travel the world, it's kind of like this, I don't know, a pack of them, and you all get along. And, Jack Miller and a few of the guys from Australia and things, they've really settled themselves in Andorra, which is a couple of hours from here, and they cycle together, they ride motocross together and so on. And that's what you need to get. The unique thing about us in the early 80s is anybody who was an American, like it was me, Kenny, Freddie, Eddie, that went back to the States, you had to bring some sort of movie back over, and it was a VHS. You remember VHSs?
I do.
And so there were things that Freddie would, this was funny to me. Freddie would record stuff off the Shreveport, Louisiana, where he was from, and then on the bottom of the ticker tape of the movie it would say, warning for the tornado coming through Shreveport, everybody batten their hatches. And so, I'd never seen that because I've never lived back east. I'm an earthquake guy in California. And so when you saw that, it was quite unique. We didn't have the satellite dishes that we have today and the things that the young guys have. But we did, like what you say, everybody had motorhomes back then. They have their motorhomes now, but they all fly in planes back on Sundays and head back home to wherever they might be. A few of them drive or something like that, but it's very few.
Yeah, and of course it was totally different back then. Motorcycling was still in its heyday, and there were sponsors that itching to get exposure, so they'd throw money, get a good team, and go find the fastest rider. But now, and then they just hire you. You're a hired gun. Now you're a part of the equation. The Budweiser money and the cigarette money isn't there anymore, and even the big companies that have large expenditures for advertising, motorcycling, it's a challenge to get into the motorcycling market. So it's a whole different dynamic. Trying to get a talent out there. He's fast enough to win, but he doesn't have the cachet with the team and or a sponsor. Therefore, obviously, you're at a loss. You've got to find a local sponsor that sees you as their valuable tool to expose their brand. And like you said, Spain is huge. It just lit up, and all these guys want to become MotoGP champions, and there's businesses there that see them as valuable, bring exposure to their product. So that's another dynamic. You can't just be a super fast guy, but you got to be a talent that somebody wants to put on a bike, not just to win, but to promote. And that's another challenge in America. We don't have huge corporations that have that interest in motorcycling in particular.
Yeah, so exactly right. As I was saying, with the amount of riders that are coming through, anytime I look at a championship that catches my eye in the press, when I go flicking through the internet and stuff like that, this so-and-so name, and I don't really pay attention to what I think the name might be, what country it is, but a lot of times it's Spanish. The kid won the championship. And so it's another Spanish rider that a Italian team would want or Spanish team would want, or sometimes even a Dutch team. So it really depends, because they're trying to get these young guys, and because they're European, they just automatically feel that they'll have a head start with that. And again, because we've been slow and trickling, and sometimes not even the faucet on with an American coming this way, it's really trying to start again with that. I know that there's been a couple of guys racing in the E-class, with Australian, Josh Hook, things like that, trying to gain some home inside the paddock, because if you're in the paddock and you're seen in MotoGP, there is a slight chance, if you can show some talent, and also to be able to speak to the press really well, that you might have this chance. I mean, from what I've seen from Sean Kelly, and I've got to ask you, and I hope I'm not saying anything negative. Why is it Sean Dylan Kelly? Because I'm thinking I'm Sean Kelly, and they go, no, it's Sean Dylan Kelly. No, I think his first name is Sean, his last name is Kelly. But anyway, you can see, you can feel it. You can, he's just gung ho, and he can't wait to go there. That's probably because Joe Roberts and Boubier's already made a home there. That's given him cushion to talk to. And that's, again, the same thing that I had with Kenny, Eddie, even though we were competing against each other, to have that soft spot of being able to talk, especially dirt riding, motocross, and those things. And those guys will be able to do that, because Rocco's Ranch is 45 minutes from my house here. And as I say, they do it very, very well, professional. There's a few other places that these guys all train, Quattararos and the guys that are winning the world championships. Dakota, my son, trains with these guys, and they have a lot of fun. Hills around here for cycling, because everybody knows how physical MotoGP really is, and how tough the class is.
Yeah, it's. I'll answer the Sean Dylan Kelly thing. No idea. A lot of people use their middle name. It's possible that there was another Sean Kelly in school, so they had to differentiate him from that Sean Kelly, and it had to be Sean Dylan. And it flows. It's not bad. It's better than having one name, like some rappers these days. But Sean Dylan Kelly, it just rolls off the tongue. It sounds good, and it does differentiate him from other guys. Sean Dylan Kelly, it's a long name. If they put him on the roster, he's going to stick out. Everyone else has these little names, so he's got to fight with name envy, if you will. But he's enthusiastic. He's young. He's well spoken. I'm always impressed with these young guys, how well spoken they are, how they can convey their feelings, emotions, and technical stuff, even after having raced for 30 minutes at full speed, having, battled with other guys, hot, sweaty, dehydrated, and they convey an air of maturity that I probably don't even have to this day. I'm always impressed. And I hope he goes over there and does well. He's one of our guys. I'm hoping we can get one of our guys back up there. I just love seeing Arai on the box. We have a couple of guys at MotoGP now that get up there pretty close a couple of times, but it's just, far and few between. You brought up Dakota, and I was going to bring that up. Dakota raced there for a while. He raced in Moto America as well. What's it like being a dad? You were out there, you did it. Now you got to watch your son do it. What was that like?
So It's super funny is my father had no experience in racing. He rode motorcycles, but Harley Davidsons, old knuckleheads and things like that. My father was born in 1926. He's gone now. He passed away just over a year ago. But they were into hot rods, drag racing, things like this. So when I had an opportunity to ride a motorcycle, I did it. And then near my house, right by San Jose Airport, across the freeway there, the land is still there. It's got a few full tanks over there for the airplanes, but it used to be Trimble Road. I used to ride there every week, and then we had short tracks and things like that. When I started doing it, he used to just take me out there in the field, and I used to ride around and try to go with the faster guys, the teenagers and things like that. And I'm 12 years old. And my first bike was a Steens. So my father never really looked at it as danger, and neither did I, and neither did my mother. My mother was a real house mom. She took care of us and things like that. And the way it kind of was, I was born in 1959. So the 60s and the 70s and so on and so forth. But man, motorcycles, riding in the dirt and so on was exceptional. And so for my father to teach me, he would stand there and say, why are you going so slow? That would just piss me off. So I'd go faster as opposed to understanding technique and things like that. But for some reason, Brian, I had talent, right away. And I, from the age of 12 and into 14, I got a Yamaha contract. Jim Doyle, who you probably know, was the manager of Kenny Roberts back then. And Buster Roberts, Kenny's dad, saw me riding. And sure enough, I got the ride and went off. But for me to have a kid now, knowing how everything went, so times were easier back then, tougher in certain ways, but easier because you could work on motorcycles and those type of things. Over here in the championship, it was about money, and it was about a lot of money. Dakota started to ride when he was 5 years old. Unfortunately, he had an accident when he was 12 and hurt his shoulder. And I can't think of the name of the nerve. It's a nerve inside your shoulder when you dislocate a lot. And axillary, I think it's called, I want to say. Anyway, that nerve, if it dies, you don't have the shoulder muscle that you should. So because he was so young, they couldn't operate on him until he was going to become an adult. And by that time, it was too late. So they actually did a nerve transplant in Switzerland, did a 6.5 hour operation. He's got part of the muscle back, but not full. But going back into that, if you think anything was crazy, was 100 grand, 150, 200 grand, depending on what team, to ride 7 races in the Spanish championship. 7 races. And when you go back then, and it was 125s, 2-stroke. Aprilia had the monopoly with that before KTM started coming in, and Honda and stuff like that. And it was just in a so difficult stepping stone to go to. And I didn't make billions. I'm not. My bank accounts aren't full like most people would think. But we're talking 600-700 grand now to go into Moto2 racing a year. And the teams are there accepting. We've got a bike, and not to be negative, but that's the way it is. When we lost, if you will, tobacco money and that type of money that was so huge that even 3 or 4 teams had that money going down the line. So Wayne Gardner with Remy came over. Remy and Dakota's now 27. And Remy is 23. So Dakota was 15 and Remy was 10, 11 years old, something like that. They are close friends, as you can imagine. Dirt tracking, they do super motards together and all the time. They train together, and Dakota really pushes Remy in a lot of ways. But it was tough. So the stepping stones were going. I spent money, and then we went a certain direction. to ride a Moto2 team. He had like one race or something like that, or 3 races in the Spanish Championship. Someone I don't remember can't think of the team right now. The Spanish team down in Valencia, Jorge Martinez. Jorge Martinez offered him a Moto2 bike. He had to ride in Silverstone, and I knew Silverstone was a tough circuit. And, you know, he didn't get to shine. And so therefore he was a replacement rider, and he just got taken off and kind of left behind. It was no problem if I wanted to spend $600,000, but I wasn't going to take any money out of a house or anything like that to kind of do it. And, you know, even today, when I talk to him about it, because I know he feels, and I do too, I wish that something could have happened that would have rolled into a ball and been stronger, but it just didn't. Anyway, going to the America, it was the same kind of category. You know, Dakota was born and raised here in Spain. My wife wanted to live in Europe and Belgium and stuff like that. What we benefited from is Dakota and my daughter, Taylor. They speak 5 languages, you know, Italian, Spanish, Catalan, English, and French. They're schooled in all of those. So on one side, they didn't get the racing side of things, but on the other side, they got a well-educated, rounded life. You know, I had so much time to come over here and spend a lot of time still with my parents at the last part of their lives, you know, in California. So I got to do that. So, and Dakota's learned a lot, and he knows, he knows he could have done it. But, you know, even when he rides today, he might say to me, you know, Pops, my shoulder still, I can feel it's a little bit weak. So to me, when I hear that, I know that he knows that if we had continued down that line, it might not have worked. It might have, but it might not have. One of those things that reflects and mirror on me is watching Marc Marquez this year and last year, because we believe he has something very similar, not maybe not the same nerve, but there's something going on inside the shoulder where you think that you have the same amount of push, but you don't have the same amount of muscle. It feels like it is, but one side is a little bit weaker, and we've seen that with Mark. So it is what it is. But I can tell you, really positive news is that Dakota will be the team coordinator for the LCR factory Honda team. So it's the #2 Honda team. As I said, they're going to use him for the fact that he has his languages and things like that. He's been working with Cal Crutchlow over the last 3-4 years. Cal obviously being the Yamaha test rider. They had the last test and hoorah this last week down in Jerez. But Dakota's learned a lot from the manufacturers. You know, Ducati, everyone obviously knows who he is because he's lived in the paddock. And he's well welcomed everywhere he goes. I mean, the Japanese I know in Yamaha are also a little, not disappointed, but obviously feel sad that they don't have him anymore because he was such a good tool to have inside the garage.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, racing aside, I know it's opportunities and those, you know, one lost effort or one, you know, miscue, it sets things in motion one way or the other. And I know money is a big part of it. And, you know, like you said, you don't want to mortgage the house on a race potential, which has so many variables out of your control. But it's great that he's made a career, because I know he was around the pits quite a bit, working with MotoGP racers. I didn't know how many languages they spoke. That's awesome. I can barely master one. Still working on it. But it's great that he's got the opportunity, and I didn't know about his injury. He did incredibly well considering the injury he had. But it's great that he's found a home in MotoGP and whatnot. And I keep checking over my shoulder. This is actually one of the helmets he wore in Moto America. It's actually one of your replicas that was tweak that we never produced. People liked it. The green stripes, I think, were the tweak. But it was kind of cool to see him, and I'm sure you gotta get a tickle out of him wearing your replica, or one of the newer replicas, not the original.
Yeah, it was super funny because today when I went on Arai News Live just to check out some of the stories that you have done up on there, I noticed the helmet sitting up on top shelf in one of your videos, and he was on the sofa here, and I showed it to him, and he goes, "Oh, dude, that's my helmet." And he goes, "How did you get one of my helmets?" And I said, "I'm sure it was when you were raced in America, and you probably crashed on it."
Yeah, it is a crash. We usually get the returns, but this is the damage you put into it. Let's see, Jeff's going to switch back here any second, Jeff. There it is. So it does have a little impact on it. You know, cracked the fiberglass a little bit and wrecked the vents. But yeah, most of the helmets on the wall here are in fact returns, just for one, window dressing, and two, we like to check to make sure things are working as they're supposed to work, and the factory likes to see stuff. So it's cool. And you know, all the racing we do is basically part of our R&D. America, little kids, big kids, adults, MotoGP, you know, so we have basically returns from around the world. So this is one that's just cool. It's good color, has some good damage to show people what a helmet's supposed to do and what we expect of it. But now this brings me up to, I'm jumping around my questions. They're kind of not in any kind of order or sequence, but I went to look, and do you know how many replicas you've actually had with Arai? Have you ever counted, or do you have a list anywhere?
So let me see. Obviously, the helmet that's right, I don't know, can you see this helmet? The red one here that I got my hand? Yep. Obviously, that's my original, that's the very original design from 1980. And it was designed with the fact that when Jody Scheckter won the world championship in Formula One, Jody Scheckter for me had a cool helmet, had a big Jody on the side of the helmet. And when I raced for Suzuki, although I wasn't with Arai, but when I raced for Suzuki, they said, what do you want your helmet to look like? And I said, you know, red, black, and some yellow, kind of like the Heron Suzuki colors. And sure enough, it came out that way. And the name, if you look at any of my past pictures in the early 80s, the name is in yellow. When I switched to Arai, which was in 1987, and I've been with you guys ever since, we switched the color to white on it, and I kept that helmet until the end of my season. We always talk to Drudy and a few of the companies, obviously in Japan, that make designs and things, and we thought about creating something different, more, you know, for the younger person and things like that. And so I said, let's stretch it. So I think we did probably six or seven, and including some of those ones that we did 4 different colors in. The video that you can still find on YouTube, Randy Mamola with the Arai helmets that a good friend of mine, Robert Fujioka, made with me. You know, we did a great thing, and even Dakota is in the video, I think, with, I don't know, he's 7 or 8 years old. We really wanted to, we talked about doing this even when you were in Japan. I don't know when the last time I saw you when we were in Japan, you remember? Yeah. And we were talking about new things and what we were going to bring out. We wanted to shoot a film. We want to go back to the factory and really shoot a film with someone like myself, who's so interested, not in just the fact of who the company is, but what they produce, how they produce, and who the people are that have their hands on the helmets. And that's the unique thing about Arai, and that's what I've always felt. And when I talk about this, I have chicken skin, because it really is passionate. It really is something coming from a family member, the members of the Arai name. And it's very much so like the other company that I'm associated with is Alpine Star. I've been with them since 1977, 78. When you think about it, when I first started. So yeah, and we started to do that, and eventually the last 2 helmets, the 2 designs that I have, that's white and in red, sitting right here, Drudy, you know, the Aldo Drudy, who makes a lot of different companies helmets and things like paint jobs and things like that, comes up with some great ideas. You know, it's hard to do, and you know, I put this stuff up, and this last helmet that we did is so cool because it is, you're more hip, if you will, or I don't even know if the kids say that anymore. But, you know, design-wise, just kind of fit the era of things that were going on, and a lot of people love it.
Yeah, the variation on the theme, I think it's grown pretty well over the decades since we first started it. I checked, and I couldn't verify it 100%, but I would say 5 to 6 designs. It could have been 7. And I have to think there was at least 15, 18, maybe 20 variations of colors across all of those. But they're all really consistent with the original theme. You know, they paid homage to that original theme, and they just modernized it. You know, this one was a little swoopier. The last one was a little bit more blocky, a little angular, hipper, if you will. Again, I don't know if they're using that word anymore. But it's really cool in the prolific nature, like Mick doing. His graphic is always the variation on the same theme, but we modernized it.
I tell you what I'll do is I'll put the ones that I have here together that I have in Spain. I have some in California. I'm going to California in January, but I'll put them together and I'll take a picture and put them up on Instagram. We can kind of share those kind of things for ideas. I mean, when we made the one that's right behind you on the top shelf, the red helmet with the streaks, just to your left.
There it is. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, we made that. We made it blue, yellow, gray, and red. And when we made it, everybody loved it so much. And, you know, I still have people contacting me. Can you still get the yellow one? I have all three and I want to get the yellow one and so on. So it was very unique. It was very fun to do. But man, when I come back to my trusty one right here, the red and black, it really brings back so much history of me racing with Kenny and everybody. For those of you like, but you know, when you like what you did with Kenny's new helmet, you know, I love it. I love the launch of what it did, the conception of the Eagle, everything to do with it, because it brings back that history of who Kenny really was.
Yeah, and it's always, you know, rewarding to think that people want to remember the graphics and they still like and use it to this day, and especially seeing younger guys wear an older design that, you know, was raced, or the racer retired before they were born. Like, you know, so much of this nowadays is, that was before you were born. You know, so, but it's unique, and it's nice to know that these things stand the test of time. I mean, that graphic is very simple, very linear, but it's iconic and very, you know, stands the test of time. I don't know if we'll do another one. I'm sure you'd love to do it. I'm going to have Jeff put a link to that video that you guys created for the graphic so people can see that, because I know you have a lot to do with designing and implementing and bringing the designs to Arai, which makes it easy for Arai, trying to find graphics, new graphics that will sell. It's nice to have people bring them to us with history, heritage, some instant recognition and demand, and of course cool colors that match different motorcycles and different riding gear. It's always important. So I was going to ask you your favorite, but mine is always the original. Yours, I believe, is the original. And I'm going to ask anyone who's watching the video, whether live or later, in the comments, go ahead and drop down if you own one, which one you own. If you don't own one or you do own one, what's your favorite one? And if you could get one that's no longer available, let us know. And we're going to do an impromptu survey, and we'll check back every time someone chimes in, and we'll probably post on our social media and on the website, you know, as that survey progresses, and we'll let you know kind of where the market lies, where the customers think is the most popular one. And who knows, we're always looking to bring back some memories, and we bring back retro designs now and again, so maybe that'll be one of the next ones we do. You know, given the demand and the shortage in production these days, it might take a while, but you know, we're going to be here for quite a while, so I'm pretty sure we can bring it back when the time presents itself. What was my other question? There we go, my dark. So you said you joined Arai in the late 80s, and that's kind of when I came on in the mid 80s, probably the year or two before you came on. I was just a peon doing the grunt work in the office, fixing stuff, so I didn't get out into the races much, but I do remember basically my entire career you were pretty much with Arai, which is awesome. You know, you talk about the family and the relationship and that connection you have. You know, Arai has always considered racers part of the family. You know, the Arai family makes Arai helmets. We like racers that want to be with Arai because it's an Arai, not because of what it represents money-wise or, you know, fame or fortune or whatever, but knowing that, like you said, with Alpenstar and Arai, you started way back when, you relied on them for your protection. They served you well over the years, and it kind of means something when you think about looking at a helmet that was wrecked and, you know, how well it served. We like that. We like to have racers understand what a helmet represents, that it served them well, and that, you know, there's no reason to change, because it's hard to say. It's like I consider this the most important piece of safety equipment you're ever going to buy or wear. You can do without a lot of things in your body. Your brain, sometimes, you know, you can't always reboot the computer very well. So it's important to keep that in mind. So we basically, as I said earlier, are making every effort to honor the Arai legacy and keep making, you know, the best helmets we possibly can. Hopefully another one with your graphic on it. I think the most recent one over your shoulder there, I think, was in production up until last year. And of course, things run their course of time. They go through a few years, and then demand basically drives the market. If the demand slows down, we want to move on. So that's the most recent version. So, at some point we might do a collage or a new version going forward. It's your favorite helmet?
Well, my favorite helmet in terms of what it feels like is obviously the brand new one, because the new one, the RCV, I always get them mixed up because California, I mean, in the States, you call it a different, letters. This one, as you see, is the RX-7V. Obviously, there's different reasons for that, different parts of the world that you guys name them a specific way. But the comfort of this helmet is insane. I mean, anybody that you give it to that wears a different helmet, that tries it on, it feels like you don't have this helmet. It's like there's no way it can stay on my head and not move because it feels so light on my head. And I'm not lying, people, when I say this. We got Gabriel Rodrigo, who's coming from Moto3 into Moto2 next year. And I know he's tried the helmet. He's a Moto2 rider stepping up from Moto3, and he was blown away. And when they talked to me about Arai, a friend of his called me and said, "Listen, we're courting Arai, and Arai's courting us, and we're hoping that we can put something together." He's from Argentina, but he lives here in Spain, and he put the helmet on, and he could not believe it, and he was just tired of the fact of using some equipment that just didn't stand the test of time, and or what it felt like when you had to race under tension, rain, those instances. And it really works. So I know that it worked. Mick Doohan, who stopped by here just a couple of weeks ago because he were going down to Valencia with his son Jack to test F3 cars, was super fun to talk to him about it. All of his designs, his kids' design and what they're going to do. I talked to Schwantz, who's another guy that you guys did some fantastic work with in terms of making designs in his helmet, but his classic one, and it's coming to Freddie Spencer, that classic Honda colors, the HRC looking, red, white, and blue. You can't get away from that because you can see it anywhere and go Freddie Spencer. And those are the cool things to have in your repertoire when you have a great product such as Arai.
It is always remarkable how they improve things. You always think it's the greatest thing ever. How could they make it better? And they do. They always make it more comfortable. Don't know how. They make it lighter, but just as strong and satisfying the demands that Arai puts on itself. I mean, we don't just settle for enough. We do the best we can. And it's remarkable that we get the most comfortable helmet that I've ever worn. I'm biased, of course, but when you have a helmet that's comfortable, you can focus on what you're doing. When you have a helmet that's lighter or lower center of gravity, you can function better. It doesn't distract, it doesn't take away, it doesn't interfere with what you're doing. So it is always remarkable that people always think the next helmet, I want the exact same thing I had before. It's like, well, try the new one. It's better. No, I like this one. This one's better. And then they try the new one. They're like, no, okay, you made it better. That's awesome. So it's remarkable that they have a fire under their backside of their own making to keep them motivated to make a better helmet. And again, MotoGP is a proving ground, if you will. We've done a lot of our homework back over the decades, but as I said, racing is R&D for Arai. It's probably 10% marketing, 90% R&D, and feedback from guys like yourself who do the extremes. Freddie Spencer was instrumental in our eye port sealing because he had contacts and his eyes were very dry, and his eyes would dry out and the contacts would pop out of his eyes and stick to the inside of the shield. So we had to seal the helmet so that the air wouldn't get inside and dry his eyes out and pop his contacts. So anyone who appreciates the seal of a Arai helmet shield, you could thank Freddie Spencer and his pushing for that, and Arai's willingness to try and help him perform better, and that helmet performance helped him perform better on the racetrack. So it's a huge asset that we started in the early 80s, and to this day, Arai has never let that go. That importance of racing and racer feedback like yourself. It's been tremendous to make a consumer product better by your efforts, and we always appreciate those efforts. And again, your ability to convey that feedback and the tech without being whiny, if I dare say. You know, people always say, I always joke how some people whine, but racers complain on a whole nother level because they're so focused. They can tell you exactly what's wrong with something, and then we have to figure out exactly how to fix that. So I've always appreciated Arai's ability to take that feedback and make it into something that's beneficial to not only the racer, but a consumer. And people get your replica right behind you. They're buying a helmet that you wear. I mean, when you were racing, or if you go out and do your two-up rides and that helmet you're wearing is a production helmet, I like to always remind everyone that is the exact same helmet off the exact same production line. His might have Randy's name on it, because in America we didn't put Randy on it because everyone wants their own name. They don't want Randy's name on it, they want their name on it. So we put it blank. Europe, it came out Randy. In Europe, it's the RX-7V. America, it's the Corsair X. Again, names tend to gravitate. People stick to a name and they understand and they recognize it, and it's familiar, so that's why there's different names. But I always like to remind everyone, the helmet that he's wearing and promoting is the exact same helmet you're wearing, and I always remind everyone that Mr. Arai himself, when he wears a helmet, it's taken off the production line. It's a white cue ball taken off the production line, nothing special. So when people talk about Arai's that good, well, Mr. Arai makes it as good as he can because he might wear it, and he does wear it, and he might need it and might use it. And he decides that his consumers deserve the exact same quality of protection that he gets. So I always like to remind everyone of that because sometimes people gloss over that a little too easily. I don't think you could say that about a lot of companies, but I know Arai has been that way since the early days of our racing career, or our racing endeavors. So, and I just mentioned real quick on the two-up thing, I just want to touch on it briefly. You haven't done the two-up in a while, you've done a lot of commentating recently, but the two-up program, when did that start? How long did it run, and whose idea was it? And what did you think about that whole episode and that whole chapter?
So, back in 1996, as I said, I was a test rider for Kenny and the team in 93, so 94, 95, 96. Kenny Jr., Seti Gibernau, Curtis Roberts, they were racing in the Spanish Championship and two-strokes and things like that. We had again, the 500s could be packaged and taken. You didn't need computers to run them and things like that. So Warren Willing and everybody, we had a test team here, 10 minutes from where I'm at now at this house. And, Kenny had a house here, and this was to start the new Roberts generation and so on. And so, when, lend me again the question you just asked, because I just lost a bit of track there.
No worries. The two-up ride, when did it start?
So, I don't know. We had an extra chassis, and Kenny, I don't know if he had a beer or too many, but he said, let's build a two-seat bike. And Warren goes, what? So, we didn't tell Yamaha or anything, but he was building a two-seat bike, and we built it in 1996. I rode it one time at the Barcelona Grand Prix, and Kenny was sponsored by Marlboro back then, and we brought it out, and I gave the announcer a ride and maybe one other person, and that was it. And what Kenny was trying to do is present something that was going to be so cool that if you want to get on a real Grand Prix bike, this is not a street bike, this is not anything, this is prototype, and do it. So we did it, and it kind of set, it kind of went to sleep. It just didn't take off. He tried to get Dorna to try to put some funding into it and things like that, and they just said, we don't think it'll work right now. And come the next few years, when Kenny split from Yamaha and built his own bike, Modinas, and with a Malaysian company, the Malaysian brand. Again, he still had his workshop here and so on. Yamaha came to me and said, would you like to ride a two-seater? We're going to build one. And so that basically they carried off of what Kenny had built. And you can look it up online, some pictures. Again, I'll do some postings in the winter of the bike. But it was a genuine 500 factory bike that we did it. And eventually, this was not just Yamaha, but it was PMI, Philip Morris, Marlboro, if you will, were the people that decided to work with Dorna and to create this, this ride, this potential thing that would just intrigue everybody who wanted to ever be on a Grand Prix bike to get on the back. And so, we did it. But then in 2002 is when Philip Morris switched over to Ducati. And the same thing. It was working so well. I think we were doing an 8 Grand Prix. It was working so well. So I started with them in 2002. In the year 2000 to 2019, I've done more than 6,000 passengers from very famous people that you've seen. You saw Michael Jordan, who wouldn't get on the back of it with me, but he did ride the bike. Some people put that up not so long ago on their Instagram, which was super special. It's really been an exciting tool, if you will, to bring people in. I mean, we brought it to Laguna Seca. We brought it to Indianapolis. Juan Montoya, who's an Arai race driver, Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar. Now he's racing sports car championship, I think. I know the 12-hour or whatever. I'm not sure what that is. His son, Sebastian, they all were part of it. Back then, I'll give you a story. Juan wasn't allowed to get on it when he was racing in Formula One, but his wife got on it. And I had the helmet upstairs, the Arai helmet, and it was Juan's helmet with her name, Connie, just on a decal. And it was super funny. But eventually, when he was a NASCAR guy, IndyCar guy at the Indianapolis 500, maybe, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, he got on the back of it, which was super fun. One of the other greatest was Ricky Carmichael and Chad Reed, both motocross guys that are iconic. I couldn't believe that Alpine Star brought them to Indianapolis as guests, and they got on the back of the bike. And it was super funny because I had Chad Reed on the first lap because we did 2 laps, and I had Chad Reed, and I slid the bike around and in one of the corners in the back. And Ricky was looking at Chad's eyes when he got off the bike, kind of like, should I do this? Like, should I go? And I don't know. And to this day, we still talk about it. But it was something very, very close, as you can imagine, to my heart. But not just about famous people. It was really about the fan, where we actually took people out of the audience. Obviously, they had to be checked and things for medical and so on and so forth. The fastest we've ever been with that 2C bike is about 185, 190 miles an hour, like Silverstone and a couple other long racetracks, Mugello. Another super funny story was Luca Catalora, who's a long-time Arai helmet racer, 250 world champion. Luca came on with me with the bike. I conned him in, and I said, "Don't worry, we'll have a good time." And Brian, I'm telling you, this is the easiest thing in the world to scare, if you will, the shit out of somebody. But it's nothing that I ever tried to do, because for me it was something very, very serious, that just because you feel somebody who feels good behind you on the back of the bike doesn't mean that they're not scared. Mm-hmm. And in Arrabbiata 1 and 2, which are the 2 fastest, you go down the hill and you head up in Mugello, the first lap, because I never get racers. I never get racers that know the racetrack. I get people who've never been on bikes. I get people who've never been to specific racetracks. So they're kind of tending to lean the opposite way, which is okay because the bike's really stable and I ride what their levels are. Anyway, when Luke and I went through those corners, I went, wow, man, the next lap's going to be great. And the next lap when I went through, I said, damn, I could have gone faster. Our conversations afterwards were Lucas going, I didn't think we were going to make that second lap.
Really? Oh, wow.
So, the quickest I've ever been was probably, it was with a German rider, national champion in Germany. It was in the very beginning of the 4-stroke era. With the 2-stroke. It was 10 seconds off of pole position. Yeah. With a 2-lap run, because we couldn't time it, because now the last Michael Schumacher came with me in 2006, and Michael started the process of, are you sure you want to do 2 laps with people? because racers who know speed, know strengths, know things, really do it. Now, obviously, with somebody who I know can understand speed, I can go quite fast. But when it came down to it, we decided to do 1 lap per rider, and to this day, that's what they're doing. And that is because we get more passengers on it, through a Grand Prix weekend. The most people we've ever done is 101 people in 2 days. And if you think of the process of doing that, I was in South Africa. If you think of the process of doing that, the amount of leathers that Alpine Star had to support us with, we had Arai supporting us for a couple of years before another helmet company had to support the passengers because of sponsorship or whatever. But I, of course, remained with my Arai helmet. But it was something that was exceptional and still is.
I had no idea you actually did that many at one event. I thought it was like maybe a dozen at an event, but to be able to put that many people.
No, so what we did on weekends was we'd have 3 slots. We'd have 36 people. We'd do 12 in the morning. We had 2 bikes, and then I think 5 or 6 years later, they built 2 bikes. So Frank Elbattini, myself, he was the test rider. We ran 2 bikes. When we ran 2 bikes, I'd have 6, he'd have 6, so 12 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, and 12 on Sunday. But on Mondays, we would have, in Malaysia, we would have 75 to 100 people. And if you think Malaysia's hot, you ought to go there and ride a motorcycle and stay on it for about 1 hour and 20 minutes with passengers trying to lean the wrong way and go the other way. But it was super, I'm telling you, it was super, super exciting and always fun. And the best passengers for me were ones that said, I'm not going to go with you. I would really love to, but I'm not going to go with you. And those were the passengers that I would talk them into it and say to them, if you don't want me to take it out of 3rd gear, I don't have a problem. But let me go down the straight fast, let you feel the speed, let you feel the braking, let you understand it. I did stoppies with these guys. Bernie Ecclestone, the age limit was 60, but before that, Bernie Ecclestone in 2001 came with me. He was 73 years old. His wife came with me. She was a bit younger back then. He was 73. I think Bernie now is 94. And when I said to him, this was on the 2-stroke in Portugal. I said to him, his wife goes, I'm going to go with Randy on the bike. He goes, oh, great, honey, that'd be great. And I go, Bernie, I'm sure we can find a seat for you. He goes, you got a seat? I'll be there. And Montoya, this was super funny. Montoya sent me a text message, scare the shit out of him. Frank Williams, who runs the Williams Formula One team, told Bernie showed me on his phone. They're sending him messages. You can't go on that. You can't. He's obviously the supremo of Formula One. And I did 2 laps, and we did 180 mile an hour on the 500 down the front straight. And Carmelo Espeleta, who's the CEO of Dorna, is just going, why did I let Randy do this? But Bernie got off. I did a stoppie with him. Bernie got off and said it was the most incredible thing that he'd ever done, like Michael Schumacher, like Keanu Reeves, the famous people, but like the street bike people who really, really love racing, and the people that got to be able to do it. For me, it was an enjoyment.
No, that's so cool. Yeah, I watched those a few times, and I always thought it'd be interesting, but I think I'd be one of the people saying, nah, I don't think I'm going to do it,
One other one, as you can see, if you type it in, Ben Bostrom. Ben Bostrom came with me in his leathers that he was racing in America's Superbike or the World Superbike, the ones that look like Evel Knievel leathers. Yep. He came with me on the bike, and again, it was invited, I think, by Alpine Star. And if you ask him today, he thinks it's the fastest he's ever been up to the corkscrew in his life. I was on the Charities. So again, for me to have those kind of feeling, that camaraderie and the things from the people, from the fans, doing more than 6,000 people, for me it was an incredible sensation, feeling, more than what I could even imagine from when I raced in Grand Prix racing.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think somebody did that in the U.S. The M4 team kind of copied that concept and did it in Moto America. And again, there were suggestions. Oh, we should try that. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. Not that I don't trust Chris Ulrich.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Chris Ulrich he got Michael Jordan on the back of the bike, and we were in Asia, and Valencia is always our last race, and Michael used to come to Valencia to watch the Grand Prix. So I told Gabriel from Alpine Star, do you have Michael's measurements? And Michael used to ride on and do track days and things like that with friends. And so we knew his leathers. So I said, I'm getting him to come on the bike. So I had the leathers, I had an Arai helmet, and I went to see him with his buddies in the garage. And I said, you want to come with me on the two-seater? We're running it tomorrow. And he said, yeah, if I said yes, you don't even have a set of leathers. I reached in this bag. I had to stand on a chair to hold the leathers up, and it had Air Jordan on the back of the leathers. Alpine Star, how professional they are. We got an Arai helmet, and the Arai riders, Eddie, Kenny Roberts Jr., Curtis Roberts, Colin Edwards, they all got to ride with Michael, do laps, because Michael said, I'll tell you what, I'll ride the bike if you let me ride the bike. So we ran around and got them to be able to do this, and he got to ride the bike. And again, there's some short video somewhere online where you can see Michael Jordan. He looks like he's riding a 125, but man, he really enjoyed it. The guys were riding wheelies alongside of him, showing the lines of the racetrack. Seti Gibernau, another Arai rider, was also out there with him, which was super cool. And to this day, when I see Michael or something, he of course talks about it. And those were just unique times with a tool that you could use. But it was because of Chris. He goes, man, I got this shit scared out of me. And he says, I don't want to be and most people are like that. Sports people go, you know what, I'll ride it and I'll ride you before that. So we'll see. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'm assuming Chris, his argument was, well, it's just, it's an American superbike. It's a street bike that's been racified, if you will, whereas you were riding or suggesting he rides something that was, special handoff, one made, one off kind of thing. And it's a little bit different of a prospect, I guess, if you think about the differential between the two. So, or Chris is just a better salesman. I don't know, but
yeah, Chris. They were all part of the championship. You remember, Michael had a team right. in America, and Michael was a part of that championship. And listen, the Ulriches are fantastic people, as you know. They love our sport to death, and I think they do a fantastic job with using the bike. Some of those guys, I think they used it 4 or 5 laps. I mean, we would never do something like that with our bike. I've done 2 or 3 laps with somebody, but it is very, very difficult to hang on to that thing when you have that much more braking power and the stuff that we can do at 300 kilometers, 180 mile an hour to stop the bike. But that was the unique thing about this Ducati, the way that we could brake with it, and do the G-forces. The people are just, they got off of it in Laguna Seca no matter where we were at. Laguna Seca was always fun to do because you come through that corkscrew and you see the fans and all that. It was always just really close-knit feel to that. So, yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, I forgot. That's right. Jordan Suzuki. So I guess Chris, being a Suzuki team as well, probably had a few opportunities to put a bug in his ear over the course of a season and finally goaded him into getting on the back of the bike, which is great that he did it. There's a lot of people that couldn't believe how Michael rode the bike. I mean, he got his feet close to the ground or on the ground on doing 5 laps or 6 laps around Valencia circuit, and he was being watched by thousands upon thousands of people, as you can imagine. But man, he got off it with that silly, beautiful Michael Jordan smile, man, that only Michael has. And it was just sensational for Grand Prix racing. That same weekend was when I think maybe Valentino might have won the championship. I know he won the M5 BMW or something. And again, Michael was scared quite badly by getting in the seat with Valentino driving the car around Valencia. It's experiences you don't get twice, or opportunities you don't get twice. So it's great that he was able to take advantage of it. And it did. I think it elevated the sport at the time, got a lot of notoriety, obviously bringing that kind of fame and his enjoyment. Like you said, the smile is iconic. I think he might have had some training to get that low on those motorcycles. Maybe had a couple of classes from some professionals.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the guy that he sponsored. And he obviously he was part of the Suzuki team. I can't remember his name.
Jeff I think Jeff just said Montez Stewart.
That was the first rider.
Yep, that's
The
it.
first rider, yeah.
Yeah, so Montez was a rider that Michael met on the street because where Michael was near in Chicago, they used to go riding, and sometimes more towards the evening time or late evening, so nobody would recognize him, those kind of things. But then he got a hold of Montez, and Montez goes, "Oh yeah, I race. I'm doing club races and stuff like that." Well, Michael said, "Let's go, man. Let's go. I'll rent the track. You help me." And for sure, they went riding, and so he was avid with it. But if you read some of Michael Jordan's history, I don't know all of his history of his whole life, but I believe his father, they had motocross bikes or off-road bikes and things like that when he was very young. He was always very keen on motorcycles, like most people are.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it is quite remarkable how many people have memories and experience of a dirt bike in the backyard. Even if it's just the old pull start lawnmower kind of thing. Yeah. But no, that's awesome. That I didn't realize how big that program was when it started. That Kenny was the one who fostered the idea, and it did have a big impact. I love watching it. It must bring a bunch of people wanting to see who's going to ride it this weekend, and see the look on their faces and who's going to chicken out, kind of a thing. But that's awesome as far as that goes. Well, we've talked for a long period of time. Is there anything that you want to say that I may have failed to bring up or ask you about? Anything on the top of your mind?
I mean, just the fact of, I've kind of been shut up, if you will. You see how much I love to talk. You see, there's so much inside of me that I can continue to talk with. So I hope you have me back. I hope that we can make something of this, even if I do short programs with you to talk about this next year's history for American riders and things like that. It would be kind of cool for me to do an Arai piece or something like that. But my passion for this sport lives within me because, just of what it's been able to give to me. As you know, Brian, I am co-founder of Two Wheels for Life and Riders for Health in Africa, where we use motorcycles to help save lives. For anybody of you that is watching this that doesn't know about it, look up Riders for Health or Two Wheels for Life. Two Wheels for Life is the NGO that we use to raise the money to run the programs that are called Riders for Health that are in 6 countries that are inside of Africa. The bikes that we are using are Arai of Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, some areas depending what country. But we are responsible for taking care of 20 million people by getting the bikes out. Each bike is between 5 to 10,000 people is responsible, in Africa. Again, so that's another whole different program that you and I can talk about. But for me, Brian, I don't know how long motorcycles has been in your life, but it started with me at 12 years old. And when my father, through my career, even before I got to Grand Prix racing, don't ever think that you're better than anybody. Don't ever think that you're, walk above anyone and so on. And a lot of people don't know that when I was 16, I held a San Jose half-mile race, amateur race, and I donated the trophies because between the age of 14 and 16, I used to race for Indian, I used to race for Yamaha when in those years of the 4 years, and I used to race 3 to 4 different categories, 50, 125, 250, 360. This is all dirt track. I had 600 trophies, 400 were first place. So my parents' house is still the same house that my sister and I have now, which is was made in 1952 that they paid $10,000 for, and it's only 3 miles away from the Apple, and they're in Santa Clara, California. It's something very, very special. So I donated the trophies, we ran it, and I wanted to help children somewhere. And to this day, I have a Crippled Children's, the Crippled Children's Society of Santa Clara, California has a therapy room because of me when I was 16. So that grew with me when 85, 86, when I started doing some things with Save the Children, which Princess Anne is the president of. I donated money to her, and things started in the mid 80s. And again, we don't have enough time to talk with that because I know we've taken a lot of people's times. But when we get back on this at the other time, I can just say that over a couple of years, I raised $150,000 that was going into Save the Children. They started a program called Riders for Health inside of Save the Children. Princess Anne said, take it out and make it your own charity, and I'll be your patron. And to this day, she's our patron. This is how it all got started well over 30 years ago. And as I said, we worked with Bill Gates. We run a program with, I think, 25 bikes, 30 bikes for Elton John Foundation. And that's in Lesotho, a mountainous country. What does Elton do? He's trying to help people that have AIDS. There's a lot of people in Africa that have AIDS. When he contacted us, how can we get motorcycles? This is what you need to do. He bought the motorcycles, and the Africans that we train run the motorcycles. We have zero breakdowns, and we can get to those people where those people don't have roads or access to reliable transportation. So, again, if you look at on the internet, it gives you a lot of stories, a lot of things that I've done and so on, but it's not just about me, it's about motorcycling. Again, motorcycle that my father bought me, a Steens Hodaka, back when I was turning 12 years old in 1972, is something that has been with me all my life in terms of giving me a passport to travel the world, to meet people, and to do the things that I do. And that's why I'm on the show with you.
No, well, I appreciate that. And I'll get Jeff to get the links to each of those organizations and charities and have a look, see what's been done, see what you can do to help if you want to help, if you can do something. Like I always say with my kids, every little bit adds up and, helps and makes a difference. So we'll do the links there, and we'll definitely plan. We do a monthly live stream, but we're always looking for things to do. So we'll have to circle back and plan to do individual segments on those different, charities and the things you do that people can, learn about that they don't even know exists and or support. Because, we all have a little extra. We all have something we want to give back, because in motorcycling, it's fun. You want to share it. And if it can help somebody beyond fun and actually is a functional part of their day and their life and makes life easier, I think motorcyclists are keen to help to do that. So we'll definitely schedule future episodes. We'll focus on each one of those things. We'll link to each one of those things. And anything we can do to foster and grow, makes this even more beneficial than just sharing stories. So we appreciate that.
That would be awesome, Brian, because we have a lot of information that we can send to you and hook up with you and try to bring that out. I know we have an office, I believe it's in Chicago, with Two Wheels for Life. And again, we have a chapter there. I mean, we're always raising money. When we were at Laguna Seca and obviously the Grand Prix, even in Texas and things, and Americans are very, very giving. There's a lot of, people that are in the industry or that follow MotoGP that know about it because of it. It is the FIM's charity, and it is the Dorna's charity. So it's not just something that I had started. It's now grown into that.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, anything we do to foster and expand it, that's great. We do appreciate it. Our videos, they're long, but it's amazing how many people, when they have the time, will come back. Not everyone's available to watch it live, but the ones that do, I'm always impressed and appreciative of them spending the time watching us live, waiting for us to make a mistake. That's usually what I look for when I see live shows. But over the months and the year, we actually get quite a few people that come in and watch the entire video. So I think we'll get some eyes and some clicks on those, and hopefully if it does good, we'll keep doing good and try and help help more people. So I'm going to let you have the last word before we sign off and put an end to it.
Well, it's been really good to be on here. It's been a while that I talked to Jeff and yourselves. I talked to Hiro-san in Japan almost weekly. I haven't seen Aki because we haven't been able to go to the Japanese Grand Prix for the last couple of years, but I always go and try to see the family as much as possible. I'm a part of the Arai industry when you think about the 34 and 35 years that we've been apart, and I think of Schwantz and Mick and all these guys, Freddie, that we're all kind of brothers. with it because we've stuck with the same company. And it's really about family, and it's really about the things we've done in our past has all been unique. We've all been battling against one another, whether it's racing or not, but it's camaraderie and the spirit of what we think about in racing and what we do. And not just about racing, but for the people that are on the road and on the street, because those are the ones that I pertain to. I really try to converse with on my own private Instagram. My daughter, without me even knowing 2 years ago, started it without me knowing, and I've taken it over. It's grown. I've got nearly 30,000 people, believe it or not. But what I tend to do is I tend to throw something that's up there periodically. I don't do it all the time, but I throw something up there. And when they take the bite, I answer. And I talk to them right away. And they just can't believe that I'm sending messages to them. I'm sending the messages to them because they're the unique people in the world. They're the ones that we've never had to fill their shoes up and try to see what it's like to be them, to get on their bikes, to go to their work, and so on and so forth. And unique questions that they come up with and the things that they do. I put funny pictures up, things like that. In fact, on my story today, I've got that big, huge Arai helmet that I'm wearing at Assen Grand Prix to show that I was doing the program with you today. So again, thank you very, very much, Brian. I know that we will work together. I know that we'll continue to do some video. But what I'm really thinking is, now that we're getting 3 Americans in Grand Prix racing, and we got Garrett Gerloff, even though may not be with Arai, they are American racers, and I think that it's really important for this company, our company, and for us being Americans to give that kind of sample. For me, I'd like to direct it with you and with Alpine Star. For me, it would be excellent.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely trying to coordinate something and collaborate and do something. Because, I think it would be great to see Americans supported and get back up there. It's always nice to cheer for someone from the home team. And again, I appreciate your time, Randy. To remind everyone, if you want to subscribe, make a suggestion for any new topics, Randy, anyone otherwise, if you want to see a collaborative video, movie project on American racers. And of course, with regards to Randy's replicas, we're impromptu poll. If you guys want to comment on which one you like the best, which one you'd like to see come back if it were possible. Just kind of keep engaged and let people see what was the most popular graphic of all. And I think we decided it was like 6 or 7 designs, 20 colorways, so there's a lot to choose from. We appreciate that. So again, thank you, Randy. Thanks everyone for watching. Every month we try and do another live show, but with Randy and hopefully some new topics, we might make that a little, maybe every 2 weeks or so, and try and give some more interesting content. We'll try and keep it a little shorter so you can watch it all in one shot. And we appreciate it very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, my friend.